one of the things that I've learned is, what are the decisions that you've made that changed your life trajectory, right? And could we take those decisions and go backwards and start to unpack the things the times when you stop putting yourself first? When I get them in touch with where they're feeling it as well, that it's a trigger to help them recognize, ooh, something's not right.
Renee Martinez is a life strategist coach and the founder of Renew with Renee. She's a personal development expert that works with high-powered female entrepreneurs over the age of 40 to achieve even more success and true fulfillment. But let me tell you, even if you're under the age of 40, over the age of 40, male, female, anything you identify with, you will take something away from this conversation, because we are going to talk about how to foster the mindset secrets to becoming highly successful in your business and your life. Renee is an incredible individual. She's a friend of mine. We met several months back, and now I have the honor of bringing her to you for this show. You know the fee for the broadcast. When you take something away that is of value, then please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You're the reason this show has grown over the past few years, and I'm grateful to you for being the best part of the Be Better team. Renee, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited that we're making this happen. We were going to have you on last month. Things got in the way of that, and I'm glad that you were persistent in continuing that conversation, because that's why this is happening now. And I know you've got a lot of things on the horizon for you right now. You've got an upcoming program. You've read through Life Force, Tony's new book, which is super cool. Tony Robbins, for those who aren't familiar with Life Force. So how are you doing? I think that's the real question.
I'm doing really well. I mean, things are moving along and life is good. I'm just living the dream.
I love that. I love specifically how you coined the term unstoppable you. And I'm curious to hear from your own perspective, what does it mean for one to be unstoppable?
Well, the best way I can express that is from my own personal experience. A couple years ago, I was doing really well. All my self-worth was tied up in my job. I'm in sales, I'm rocking it. I'm helping people go to work. And then I was laid off on April Fool's Day of 2020. Yeah.
It wasn't a joke.
Yeah. And I had this mixture of feelings of burnout. Where's my identity? Who am I now? Am I enough? And I think the most important thing that was going on was, who am I? Who am I without this? And I've always felt that, you have to be successful in business to be somebody, right? To be worthy, of attention, kindness, love, affection, whatever that may be. You just have to be the best. And I had it all wrong. And what I come to find out is success is about really knowing who you are at your deepest levels, what your patterns are, patterns of thoughts, feelings, because it's what shapes your destiny. It's the actions you take when you give the thoughts meanings and feelings. And so my definition of success is really about knowing yourself at the deepest level so you can make the changes in your life that will set you up for inner success. Because life wants you to grow, right? And when you grow, you have more to give and more sense of self.
Yeah, that's right. When life wants you to grow, and if you're not growing, there's that resistance there, the resistance of you not making forward progress. And as a result, you experiencing these emotions of, why am I not enough? I don't feel like I'm enough. You look at yourself in the mirror and you wonder to yourself, like, how did I let myself get to this point? And thank you, by the way, for sharing a bit of your story. I want to dive more into that, but you're in the sales world, right? And you're laid off from a job. I'm assuming it was a high paying job, because a lot of sales roles are. And now you're thinking to yourself, what's next, right? Yeah. But it's fascinating that you asked yourself those high level questions. because I remember back when I was in a sales role at the very beginning of my first sales career, which I was with this company for 10 years after this incident, I was demoted. And I won't go into the whole story of why I was demoted from leadership. I certainly wasn't a leader at that point in terms of my own character. I was a 19-year-old kid. But I was demoted and I was angry and I was mad and I blamed everybody else except for myself, who was really the one who was at fault. And I certainly wasn't attuned enough to ask myself those deep questions that you just mentioned, a few of them there a second ago. How did you know to ask yourself those questions? Like what did that journey look like afterwards for you?
Well, there's a lot of amazing things. I think one of the things that the most important takeaway, um, this, okay, let's just start with the journey. So there I am, feeling lost, feeling alone. It's 2020. We've just sheltered in place. Where do I go? What do I do? I'm sick of working for people that don't value me. But wait a minute, I'm also not valuing me.
Hmm.
Who am I? And what ended up happening is I was taking a master business class with a man called Marco Robert, and he's the fastest turnaround expert in the world. What ended up happening is he started telling a story about the game of life as a literally as a game, and talk about collecting tokens and when to spend them. And you're at level one and you got to be one, two, three steps ahead of somebody and at this level. And so it was something I was just like, wow, this metaphor. But then it opened my eyes up. I'm like, coaching, what's that? And I ended up finding somebody called Irwin Wills. He's a business mindset coach, and he was within this group. And the nice thing about it is I literally found him on LinkedIn, and I kind of hunted him down. And I said, "I wanna understand what this coaching thing is about." And he said, "Well," he helped me. He literally just helped me and said, "Okay, I'll take you on." And the first thing I said to him was, "I need to get rid of limiting beliefs." I have
Hmm.
no idea where that came from. I probably would consider that honestly divine intervention.
Wow.
And I worked with him for 2 years straight. So, there was a lot of talking, there was a lot of hypnosis.
Mm.
And I was able to uncover, learn. He has such a unique perspective. And so I was able to, try to find what the balance was in it. What was the good intention behind everything was going on. So my mindset was completely changing.
Yeah.
And then out of the blue, there was Robbins Mandanis right there in front of me.
Hmm.
And I thought, I have to do this for other people. But I just sat there and I was like, I need congruency. I need honesty. I need transparency. I need caring and kindness. These are all the things that I really, really value. And I was like, well, I've been listening to Tony since I was in my 20s. And I'm just now kind of having this, I guess, a personal awakening, if
Hmm.
you will. And I signed up. I signed up for Robbins Mandanis and learned everything I could about coaching. I mean, who better to learn from than Tony Robbins,
The greatest in the world.
the greatest personal development expert in this entire world? But then there was Chloe Mandanis. She's one of the greatest psychologists in the world. you know. And then there was Mark and Magley Pacia. So I had a really good team of people to learn from. And I don't know. I think what coaching did for me, when you asked about those questions that I asked to myself,
Hmm.
those are things that I constantly would ask myself, but never allowed myself to explore, mostly
Mm.
because I didn't know how to explore it. I grew up in foster care. And I had a mother that had severe mental disorder. And I was always that kid looking around at the other kids going, why don't I get to have a life like that? Why doesn't my mother hug me like that? Why doesn't she tell me she loves me? And so, what coaching has done is it allowed me to take all those questions, all those times I stared at people. Why do you choose this? Why do you choose that? What makes your life great? It allowed me to take those questions and ask other people and learn from them, but take those questions and ask myself.
Yeah.
as well and try to find those answers. So, I may have been laid off, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life.
Isn't that mind blowing how one of the most turbulent situations of your life, one of the most high stress situations, can later become one of the best situations that you've ever experienced?
It's this last 2.5 years has been chock full of what I heard everybody say, oh, light bulbs go on, aha moments. I've experienced them in quantities that I don't know if anybody else has before.
So let's go back to when you were working with that first coach before you found Robbins Madonnas, right? When you were working with that first coach and out of you came, I need to work on these limiting beliefs. And you did, and you worked on them through hypnosis, you worked on them through other forms of coaching. What were the keystone limiting beliefs, the ones that truly, after looking back, you're able to see I held on to these limiting beliefs either from childhood, adolescence, or early adulthood all the way up into adulthood, and they were affecting my decisions and my actions? But kind of a two-part question here. What were those big limiting beliefs? And also, are those the same limiting beliefs that you find in the clients that you're working with, or is it different for everybody?
That's a great question. So, the first part of your question, all of my limiting beliefs came from my childhood. As I mentioned, my mother had a very severe mental disorder. And a lot of times she would tell me, you're not enough. Nobody's going to love you. Nobody cares about you. You're not worthy. You're just a piece of da 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 da. And I didn't realize that I was carrying those things. That there was some part of me that realized that because what those things did made me a victim of myself and self sabotage. So I wasn't making good. I wasn't making the best choices to move myself forward. I wasn't aware of the game of life and
Mhm.
its tokens and where to spend them and how to move up levels. And with my coaching with Erwin, I was able to slowly unpack all of those things, release things, and heal and really understand that these weren't things that I were putting on myself. These are things that were put into me. My power was stripped as a child. Don't say what you feel. Don't say what you think. You're not this or you're not that or you can't be this or don't do that. And I realized that none of that was true.
Mm.
And I think what I see happening with my clients is so I help them with a range of human needs, but the most important things that I consistently see coming up are I have this really great life and I've got, great kids, I've got a great husband, I've got this awesome career, but I'm still find myself locking myself in the room and crying uncontrollably. I feel like I'm an imposter in my own life. I don't feel confident enough.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I can fill myself up. I'm looking for everything on the outside. I'm shopping. I'm taking trips and those things are nice, but they they're band-aids. They're not working on what's in them because they
Healing.
don't yeah, they don't understand kind of where it comes from, and I think I help them get back to who they were before the world told them who they had to be.
And when is that before the world tells us who we have to be?
In my opinion, usually around 2, 3 years old, right?
Wow.
If you think about it, our babies are born. They're 100% free. They, do say whatever. Everything is cute. Even the grossest things that happen, we're just like, yes. And then there comes a point where we're in public and they're like, use our inside voice, right? Or, we're in church, shh, don't do this, don't do that, no, you can't scream, no, you can't hit, no, you can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the conditioning starts, right? And so we then have to learn how to survive and adapt to our environment, right?
Yeah.
So, what does mom want? Mom wants me to be this really great girl that's caring and loving with the easy bake oven, the baby doll. We love it, we care for it, we feed it, we burp it. Dad wants us to maybe be successful and a really good girl. You smile a lot and you're confident, and you know, these are the expectations that we grow up with. And then there's the ones with siblings. As we get older, we make friends, our teachers, our bosses, and the list goes on.
Yeah.
And through that, if you, even with the best of parents, if you don't have a deep sense of self and what makes you tick and what makes you feel good about who you are as a person, you can unintentionally lose yourself.
Yep.
And that's what happened to me. And so that's why I can relate to these women. My situation may be a little bit different with, not such a privileged, upbringing, but the conditions are the same: lack of confidence, self-esteem, imposter syndrome. Who am I? You know, what's going to make me truly happy now that I've, you know, ran this race of achievement professionally? What do I want?
Yeah.
What
That's a
do I
great
need?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you want? Absolutely. I think that's a great question for all of us to continually ask, because it's strange how the answer changes even when you feel you're certain about what that thing or state of being is. Going back to what you just said, because that was very fascinating, the idea that we become what the world tells us to be based on what we're told. Like, you can't do this. I like how you said use your inside voice. You tell them to quiet down, right? Or even worse at some, because those are bad, but even worse when a child sings and you're on a conference call and you're like, hey, stop singing, go to a different room. And it's like, now that child, even though you didn't say you're not a great singer, that child is now thinking people don't like it when I sing around them, right?
Yeah, you're being punished for being you,
Yeah.
but and that's how they see it, like it's my fault. They're not able to discern mommy's on a call or mommy's on a podcast. This isn't the right time, this isn't the right time for me to do it. They just hear I am bad and they start to, do things differently
Yeah.
or
Now
not
I
do
don't
them at all.
exactly. I don't remember when I was 2 or 3 years old. So I'm curious, how would you help somebody to go back and discover who they were before society told them who they were?
Okay, that's a really good question. So, interestingly enough, I want to start with this. Um, there was a little girl called Ava, and she came into my life when she was 2 years old. And she had parents that kind of grew up similarly to me. And so I immediately related to her. And one of the things that I instilled in her was to use her voice, even if she wasn't doing things at the appropriate time and it included a timeout. I always encouraged her to negotiate, right? I wanted her to be in her power, and I wanted her to negotiate through things. Even when she was really angry, I'd be like, this isn't the right time, but we're going to talk about this when we're done. And what ended up happening is she could negotiate me through anything at 4 years old. At
Wow.
5 year olds, she was stronger. She was one person was she was with me. She was very needy, whiny, um, just, I want my mommy, I want my daddy's love. So I'm going to get the attention in the only way I know how, which was for her acting out, right?
Yeah.
With me, she was a completely different little girl. She was just together. She was fun. She was lively. She was laughing. We'd run, jump. We'd do all this stuff together. And she was still a little girl that, you know, needs to understand there are certain things you don't, the timing isn't right, or this, when you said that, that's not very nice. And this is why. But she was able to flourish in a very different way. So it was nice to do that. Now, to answer your question, um, I think one of the things that I do is I talk about, what's the thing that you dreamed about doing the most in your life,
Hmm.
you know? And usually I find there are two or three things, right? And if you think about it, when you're a kid, you want to do all kinds of stuff. You enjoy a lot of stuff. And so from there I just kind of talk about, so what do you think, kind of stopped you from that, right?
Yeah.
And it always comes down to, well, I had to do this and I had to do that. And, mom wanted to see this and maybe dad wanted to see that, or, maybe there were issues within the home. And so we kind of unpack all that, not so much as a therapy session, but to understand why they're not authentically in their own zone, right? The
Yeah.
deepest parts of them that set their soul on fire, right? And so it's a matter of unpacking that. And I think one of the things that I've learned is, what are the decisions that you've made that changed your life trajectory,
Mm.
right? And could we take those decisions and go backwards and start to unpack the things that the times when you stopped putting yourself first, the time when you said, well, I'll do this later, or I'll get to it later. I've got plenty of time. But right now I need to take care of my husband, my kids. I've got this expectation at work, or I'm running a team and there's just not enough time. I take them back to a place where it's a safe space for them to just go in and dream of all the things they used to dream and
Wow.
bring back that childish enthusiasm that they had for it, to see their lights, the light in their eyes. It's really amazing to start to see this metamorphosis. It's like a flower blooming.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing, the one thing I don't do is tell people what they should think, feel, do. I allow them the opportunity to come to their own epiphanies and their own aha moments, because that's when they really learn. And I feel that's when the deepest effect happens. And that's what happened with me. And so I wanted to mirror that in my coaching.
I can't tell you how profound the last 5 minutes of this conversation have been for everything that you just explained very eloquently and simply, because you just described a giant reason why people have external success, yet they feel that they have nothing. This feeling of suppressing who somebody really is. Like, you brought me back just now, by the way, to a very early memory, just by asking that question of, what did you dream about most?
Tell me
And
about that.
sure. Yeah. So I remember when I was very, very young, I forget, I must have been when I was maybe 4 or 5 max. I asked my mom for a chalkboard for my bedroom, and she got me one. She got me this, like, like a standard, kind of like the size of my sign back here, but a little bit longer. She got
Hmm.
me a chalkboard, and she got me chalk for it, obviously. And I remember drawing. I do not enjoy math, but I remember drawing math equations on the chalkboard that I was learning in whatever grade of preschool or whatever that I was in. And I just remember doing things on the chalkboard. And I remember being in an empty bedroom, teaching an empty classroom of people what I was writing down. And I remember I loved to teach, and I still love to teach. And that's a big reason why I've got the show. I feel that I've been lucky in a lot of ways, that I held on to that dream and manifested it in different ways. But also, moving into my earlier adolescent years, I wanted to be a rock star. And I loved rock and roll. I loved hair metal. I loved Bon Jovi. I loved Def
Yes.
Leppard. And I was the only 14, 15-year-old kid on the school bus who was blasting 80s hair metal. Everyone else was listening to Usher and Beyonce, but I was the kid listening to 80s music. And people were like, dude, what are you even listening to? I remember people tapping me saying, can you turn your music down? I can hear it from your headphones. And And I didn't understand it. I was like, this is really good stuff. Why don't other people agree? But I used to visualize in my mind me being the front man performing these songs that I was listening to. And if we think about how it's manifested into real life, the teaching and the performance aspect, that's what I do now. I love to work with sales teams where I'm at the front of the room in a sense, captivating them so that they pay attention, but also showing them and teaching them different strategies to live a great life. So I feel that I've been blessed to have stayed in my lane subconsciously. But again, I wasn't in my lane for a long time. And I was unhappy from the ages of 19 to 21. I was very deeply unhappy and unsettled and overweight. And it's because I was no longer in my lane. I wasn't doing those things that made me happy until I finally started to do it again. And that's when my life transformed from that point.
And to your point, because of the way that I grew up, I was never allowed to explore. I was never allowed to go, well, Renee, who are you and who do you want to be? There were a lot of motions that I went through, unknowing that's all I was doing, was going through motions. And when you do that, you are deeply unhappy. On top of it, I had, really bad anxiety, times where I would just seal myself off and go, Is this life even worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was really, really rough until I learned how to master myself. And I'm still learning. So life is not perfect, but it's really great because I learned how to master. I'm still learning uh, my patterns, my patterns of thoughts, my patterns of emotions. Um, but now what I do is I live for what lights me up.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly in some sort of I'm in a personal development book, a course, a this or that. I love this stuff. I love it so much, like air. I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited. I'm always wanting to learn. And I think, ooh, how can I use this with a client? And it's not about just, spewing it onto a client. There's always something to learn from your experiences. And I think that's the number one thing. I had somebody tell me one day, Renee, you're going to be a coach. You're going to be not just a coach, but you're going to be a change maker. You're going to have this Oprah effect.
Wow.
That's why you feel like you don't fit in sometimes. You're put here to do something that other people aren't doing, and don't water you down. And I thought, wow, that's a tall order. Like, hold on a second, I'm just me, you know, I'm bringing myself down super small, but I'm also a really humble person. I don't look at myself and go, oh, you're the best. But I do things that, I do these power moves, behind closed doors, like, yeah, you got this. You're number one. You're the best in your field. Like, I don't, I do all that stuff behind closed doors to bring myself up.
Yeah.
But, and I like who I am now. I
Yeah.
love that I get to do what I get to do. It's the best privilege in the world to help a woman regulate her emotions, her thoughts, her emotional patterns. It's really great to have somebody come to me and go, Renee, I'm lost. I know you've been there. I don't know what to do. Can you help? To have somebody just come to you and say that, it, again, it's so humbling because you just sit there. And then on top of it, when I'm in my coaching sessions, I just sit there and I'm like, you just said some really wise stuff. How did you do that? Where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
So they get to help me grow. I get to help them grow. And it's this beautiful little community and safe space that we create together. And yeah, I can't imagine doing anything else.
I love that. Yeah, I'm excited to talk more about your community, how people can be a part of that. And I want to touch on what you just mentioned about emotions specifically, because we've talked about a lot of really great things already. But one thing that we haven't specifically touched on is emotions. And I guess the question is, what is the role that our emotions play when it comes to becoming highly successful in life?
Okay. Well, that's actually a big question. Um, but the beginning, it starts with your state of mind. It starts with your values, your beliefs. Um, oh, it's a big question. Um,
Can I tell you where I got that question from
yes.
recently? So I was on your LinkedIn and I read a testimonial that one of your clients left for you. Okay. So I
Oh.
just want to read this, guys. This client worked with Renee over the past 6 months. Her name is Meredith. So shout out to you, Meredith. Meredith wrote, Renee is amazing. After dealing with some major life changes, Renee helped me to regulate my emotions and take control of my personal life. She has a variety of tools and resources. She's an outstanding listener, and she offers practical and concrete solutions to help you move forward and maintain progress. So, my question came from you helped her to regulate her emotions. And I'm curious as to how do you do that? What is there a process behind regulating emotions, and what's the importance of it?
Yeah, so there is a process behind regulating that. And um, I think where it all starts is where I start is like, what's the positive intention behind this? And then I also sandwich that with what is it right now or over the last few days that you feel is missing? What have you been suppressing? And there, it always comes down to something you're squashing, something that you're not addressing that's within you. Think about it. You know, just the same way that we can stack positive events in our
Mm-hmm.
lives. Like I made somebody's, every night I do this. Like I made somebody smile today. I created this epiphany for somebody else. I was able to help them regulate their emotions. Um, I was good to myself. I was true to myself. The same thing can happen with negative stacking, right? Things aren't going right with my kids. They're, one got in trouble for this, and, my wife is not, or husband or wife is, not behaving in the way I would like him to. And, I was late and I don't feel good about myself. And what ends up happening is we were taught to push all this stuff down so we can just get the other stuff out of the way. Well, what happens is we push everything down so much so at the end of the day, we're too tired to unpack all that
Yeah.
and work through it and let it go and release that energy. Release, what's bothering us, and or maybe read a chapter out of that book that's going to help you deal with that those emotions. But then we run into, well, where do I start? The flip side of that is, where do I start? What do I read? Who do I go to? Do I even know the extent of what I'm thinking and feeling? Most people sit on the surface of it. So I think everything is built, every negative and positive emotion is built into our nervous system. Think about somebody that, okay, let's take an employer for example. Let's take an employer that maybe is really tough, maybe doesn't listen to you as much, and they come up to you and they smile in this certain way, and that when they do this, they're going to tell you something you don't want to hear. And you know this because they've done this time and time and time again. So it's built into your nervous system and you automatically panic. And when you're in this stress environment, you can't think properly. The anxiety comes up. It's just impossible to bring yourself down. So you have to have these tools to learn how to do that. And for everybody, that's different. You have to be able to identify the state of mind and quickly unpack it and go, okay, this this isn't my reality. This is their reality. And it's really learning. There's a lot to this, but
Mm-hmm.
um,
I'd like to direct it based on what you said
yeah,
there, because you said a couple of very important things. Essentially, from my perspective, what you're doing is you are you are forwarding your focus on where you want your focus to be, because generally, from my own experience, we feel based on what we're thinking about, right? So if we're thinking about, like what you said, what were some great experiences that I had throughout my day, then your mind is going to be going towards those great experiences. Therefore, you feel great about that, right?
Yeah.
90% of my nights right before I fall asleep, and it's only 90% because I forget sometimes, I always think about, and I fall asleep generally doing this. It's a really great way to fall asleep for those who have trouble doing so, is think in your mind, what was the highlight of my day today? What was the key moment of my day? And you mentioned key moment. I always look back throughout my entire day from 6 a.m. to whatever time I'm going to bed. And it's not always easy to choose it, especially if I've talked to a lot of people that day, or spoke with some clients, or did some outreach, or did an event. It's not always the most obvious thing. Sometimes the key moment of your day is quite often something that only happened over the course of a minute or so, maybe even less. Maybe it was like what you said, when your employer walked up to you and said, "Hey, Renee, you did a really great job at this," right? And you didn't realize in the moment how that made you feel. But looking back on it, you realize, wow, that really did, that touched me in a special way. And then you're falling asleep now with this great, empowering, positive thought. And we don't necessarily know the research behind this fully, but if you're going to sleep with an empowering and a positive thought, imagine how that forms your dreams. Imagine the effect that that has on your subconscious. And you also said something else that's very powerful. You said we fail to release some of these emotions. Let's talk about the flip side. What if you had a really difficult event happen that day? Like, as an example, when you were given news on April Fool's Day, Renee, your job's not going to be here anymore, right? That is something where, unless you're a trained individual, it's hard to release the emotions that you stored based on that event. So, how, I guess the question is, how did you and how do you advise others to release these emotions that don't necessarily serve them?
That's a great question. May I say something before?
Please.
Because I wanna talk about something you said, and it's really important. I know oftentimes we choose one thing to do, but I'd like to invite you to try something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
There's a positive stacking exercise that I learned from Tony Robbins, and I touched on this a little bit. I'd like to invite you to think of 5 things at the end of your night
Wow.
that went really well for you, that you did, that created an impact, and stack that. And how you would do that is I'd have you close your eyes, right? You close your eyes and you think of what that is. And you reach out and you grab it and you pull it in. And you
Wow.
reach out and you grab it and pull it in. And you reach out and you just do it faster and faster. You don't have to do it with just 5, right? You could do it with as many. You could pull in something you did well last year, something you did well as a kid, things, a dream of your future, something, envision something in your future. So you're closing your eyes and you're pulling it in and you're pulling it in. Imagine the rush that you could feel going to bed then.
I feel it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wanted to add that. It's
Thank
something
you
I
for that.
learned. Yeah, and it is so empowering. And to lead to your question, that is one of the techniques that I use when I'm going through, or when I am having people that are having problems regulating their emotions and releasing, right?
Okay.
I first of all, I want to talk about them. Where did you feel it in your body the most?
Mm,
Where are you feeling that? And what's the side effect of that? For me, when I'm really in a high stress situation, I feel it in my neck,
mhm.
and I also feel it in my gut, and a little bit of a sickness almost, and this tension, but I feel a little bit of pain. So I want to get people, I feel like when I get them in touch with where they're feeling it as well,
Mm,
it's a trigger to help them recognize, ooh, something's not right.
yeah.
Something's not, there's an emotion in me. It's easier for people to deal with how they physically feel, to tie the emotion back to something that's going on. It's an easier trigger. It's like, oh, I don't feel good here. Wait a minute. What's going on in my head? What was I just thinking? What was the situation that just happened? And then I teach them how to. So once they've unpacked that, then we do the positive stacking,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So that positive stacking first starts with, wow, I just released an emotion. I just dealt with something, got rid of it, and I'm done with it. It's done, you know?
So just to clarify, once you've identified, and that right there, by the way, is going to be an insight for many people because it was for me. Emotions are stored in the body. Like
Yeah,
you feel
emotions are
them.
where you live.
Yes, and we can often feel fearful, we can feel anxious, or flip side, we can feel confident, we can feel good. I invite you next time you feel any of these emotions, any of them, including the good ones. The good ones might be a good place to start. Notice where you're feeling that in your body. It's a rush. It's quite literally energy that's moving, it's circulating. I found that often when I have an emotion that isn't a great emotion, it's not moving as much, and
Yeah.
it's sedentary and it's staying in one specific place, like what you mentioned with your neck or your gut. So when you've identified where in the body you're storing that emotion, do you, after you identify it and you're aware of it, is there something that you do between that moment and the moment when you start positive stacking, or is the
Yeah.
awareness of it in effect releasing it?
Well, the awareness is one part of it, but when I'm doing this with other people, I have to understand what influences them. Right? What motivates them to a positive outcome, right? Like, so I go back to what their six human needs are. What are their beliefs and rules for life? What are the top two needs that they live the most? Because our emotions, thoughts, and feelings, therefore our actions, are based on those things, right? What are the top three that you go to the most that you're addicted to, and what vehicles or rules are you using to meet the needs that you value the most?
Mm.
And then what are you unhappy about? What areas are you most unhappy about, and what are you most happiest about? You know, the needs that we reach, whether we value um, love and connection, um, whether it's significance, whether it's growth, contribution, um, whether it's, certainty or uncertainty and variety. Every decision we make is based on one of those six needs. Everything. So when you ask that question, I'm already under this understanding of what their values and beliefs are and what needs that they're meeting the most every day. And that's how I can help them work through it. Because what they value based on those needs is what's influencing them.
Yeah. So it's not always as simple as just asking a question and releasing the emotion. It can take deeper work in order to make that uh, uh, a lasting change.
Yeah, lasting change, lasting transformation. I mean, that's why when you were asking that question earlier, I'm like, oh, it's a big one, right? And
Yep.
and the thing is, so if your current life blueprint matches your expectations, you're gonna feel life is really, really good,
Hmm.
right? Um, and if you feel that they're not, that's when you're not feeling good.
Yeah.
You can have it all. Let's take the one thing um, recently that I talked about is Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
Look at that guy. He overcame a heroin addiction, alcoholism. He became this really great chef. He had a very, not great childhood. He ended up traveling the world, having everything, has a child, but there was still something so fundamentally missing in him that he was never able to deal with or unpack, that unfortunately it cost him his life. He couldn't, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so sad or so down, but this can happen to people. The reality of this is this happens to people all the time. And part of the reason why I do what I do is because I believe the healthier adult, the healthier our kids. This
Hmm.
is not about a wham bam, huge quick change. This is slow change over time. The healthier the adults are, the healthier our kids are. And in the long run, the healthier our world is going to be, the more kind we're going to be to each other, the less of this bullying that's going to be happening. You know, what I think, always think about, what actions can I take today that's going to change my outcome of where I want to be today? Take everything in super small steps,
Yeah.
because it's always a very small shift. And you know this, right? If you think about anything you've done, Brandon, to get to the podcast, there were a lot of things that happened that brought you here.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's the same thing with unpacking the reality of who we are. We just take our time.
Well
Go
said.
back. There's not a rush.
And
Be
that's
you.
reassuring too.
Yeah.
It's
It's
reassuring.
it's not about being perfect. And that's what I thought I had to be. And once I realized that I didn't have to be perfect, I just had to find out who I was and be authentically me and don't be ashamed of it. That's why I can say I'm living the dream,
Yeah.
even with the imperfections that are still in my life.
Yeah.
I still feel like I've got this no matter what. And I want people, I think what I really would like for people is to wake up in the morning, and it's something that I've done. It's a practice. It's just like, wake up in the morning and you know that no matter what's hitting you, whether you're going through a divorce, whether you have a horrible boss, or whether you're struggling in your own business, I want people to wake up and go, I've got the tools and resources. I've got this.
Wow.
I can feel these emotions. I can work through the emotions, but I've got the tools and the strategies to work through this with grace for myself without having to be perfect.
Let me tell you something. I feel really good when I talk to you.
Oh my God, thank you.
And I don't say that to every guest. While that is the case with many, and it's very specific with you, it's you're uplifting and you inspire hope. And you gave us so many practical things today. I mean, from emotions to going back and asking yourself, what was my dream, right? When I was 2 years old, 3, 4 years old at the very beginning, how did life change that? What decisions did I make? Like, it's all very practical, hopeful, and yet reassuring because, like you said, it's not all just going to happen immediately. And I feel that sometimes we feel that should be the case in a world where many things are immediate. You order something, it's here. You can immediately go on your phone, start a conversation. You can talk to anybody from anywhere. We're in a very instant world, but not everything is instant when it comes to who we are. That's a very primal thing. And back then, we didn't have that instant world. So
Yeah.
I just want to thank you. And I want to ask you, because I know a lot of other people too are thinking this has been very helpful. There's so many different nuggets here. I want you to talk about your upcoming program, Unstoppable You. And I'm assuming it has much to do with what we're talking about now, but talk to us about this program. When is it? Who is it for? And how can people learn more?
Okay, so Unstoppable You, I came up with that mostly because I wanted to reach more women. I'm a newer coach. I've only been doing it for a few years. Um, but I wanted to get a group of women together and build a community around helping each other grow. So I take a lot of what I've learned in my coaching practice, becoming a coach, and what I've learned from my clients. It was actually a client's idea for me to do this. So Unstoppable You is for the woman that has this vision of what they want their next steps in life to be, but don't really know how to bring it to fruition. And it goes deep into the 6 human needs, what your beliefs and rules are for life. I help them come back to who they were, um, before the world kind of told them who they had to be. It's it's really fun because there's a sense of community. Although what I'm saying, it's while it's very deep, you know, I've had the fortunate ability to learn how to make this really fun where you're left feeling uplifted and inspired and hopeful. And yeah, it's really about creating your life blueprint so it matches how you feel inside.
Mm.
So everything is 100% aligned. And you can oh, there's just so many levels of this. I'm sorry. I always have
It
a hard
goes over
time.
6 weeks, right? So I know it's a
Yeah,
long
so
process, but and not too long, you
So
know?
there's 2 different ones. There's the 4-hour one for the woman that is just like, "Okay, I'm pretty good with myself, but I need some more tools, and I can go and run with it." The 6-week one is really about the integration. So
Mm.
the integration goes into the 6 human needs, what they value, their top 3 needs, finding out if that's right for them and that aligns with who they are and where they wanna be. So that's the difference between them 2. So it's really about creating a life vision, right? So looking at your life now, creating the life vision and implementing it.
Hmm.
That's really what it comes down to make it at its most simple form.
That's so valuable. So valuable. And one's for the very, very busy professional who's like, I don't got 6 weeks. I need this now. Renee, deliver the goods, right? And the other one is for the person who might also be a busy professional, but they're like, you know what? I've gone through my life long enough without taking control of who I am and who I want to be. And they want to go deep and they go for the 6 weeks. Maybe they start with the 4 hour and then move into the 6 week. But for those professional women out there, where can they start a conversation with you in order to inquire more about Unstoppable You?
That's a great question. So I have a Calendly link on my LinkedIn. It's calendly.com, renew with Renee Performance Coach. There's a few hyphens in there, so I apologize. Or they can just contact me directly. They can DM me on LinkedIn, or they can contact me via my email, renewwithrenee.m@gmail.com.
Okay.
But yeah, and the other important thing to note about this is this whole workshop is about self care. So you're taking whether it's 4 hours or 6 full weeks. So the 6 weeks, there's 4 hours, and then each week it'll be 1 hour a week. That's 1 hour of self care for yourself a week. That is your growth. And that's a very empowering thing. Even if they don't want to do it, they have that 1 hour each week where it's just all about them. It's all for them with a community of like minded women that are just, they're like, okay, I am going to build a dream life that sets my soul on fire, where I feel capable, confident, strong, and ready to take on anything that comes my way.
I freaking love that. Guys, links are in the description for Unstoppable You, as well as Renee's LinkedIn and her email and all those other links. But I just got to be real with you. There's a lot of dudes listening right now, Renee, who are like, "Oh man, I want help with this," and
I'm
I
here for
resonate.
you.
Okay,
I'm
that's what I
here.
wanted to see.
Yeah, the marketing world, you have to niche, 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 niche. The truth of the matter, what I do is for anybody that is ready to grow, anybody that's ready to take control of their life and just live their dream.
So cool. I figured that was the case. I just wanted to make sure before they're reaching out to you
Yeah.
too. So you heard it here too, guys. Renee can help you as well. And I know some are like,
I've
yes,
I've
perfect.
worked with men. I love working with men. I absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Renee, it was awesome talking with you today. So glad that we had this conversation. Thank you for just sharing all of these different practical things that like there's like literally 4 or 5 things that we can incorporate right now into our day and see a change in ourselves immediately and over the course of time. So just
Thank
thank
you
you for
so
this
much.
uplifting conversation.
Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. Thank you for allowing me to share with your audience.
Thank you. Guys, what a conversation. Renee is fantastic. Links are in the description to go start a conversation with Renee so that you can experience what I just had the pleasure of experiencing for the last hour or however long we've been talking. Start the conversation. Go check out Unstoppable You, but also just go check out Renee's content on LinkedIn. Her content is frequent, it's top notch. She's giving away all of the things that we just talked about right now in longer form. So if you're a reader, go check it out. If you want to listen to this again, replay like those 4 or 5 parts that were really critical for you, whatever part that was. And as always, share this show with just one other person if you did have one of those pieces where you enjoyed it or you learned something new, or maybe we made you laugh, maybe we made you smile. Thank you for always sharing the show. And thank you again, Renee, for being an incredible guest and for sharing all your secrets of the mindset to achieve success. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.